I was still at this point where, you are really open to everything. For me, there was always this driving passion of football. So I was like, yeah, I love this business, but the graal of the graal would be to do it in football because it would be an opportunity to mix or merge two things that I like a lot. So volunteering and slash volunteer management and the football. So I was like, yeah, it sounds like a dream job. But also you have to be realistic. You never know also what are the needs. And, with some short-term contracts, sometimes you know that you're here for 3 months, 6 months. That's the deal. You do your best. Sometimes there is something at the end, sometimes not. But I think, as usual, if you enjoy the journey, that's the most important thing, that you have the feeling that you do something that you like on a daily basis. That's something that is motivating you. And I was really in this spirit. And here we are.
That was Olivier Chovin, Event Workforce Specialist at UEFA. In this episode, we're diving into the world of sports events and volunteering, exploring the intricate planning and execution behind some of the biggest sporting spectacles in the world. Olivier brings a wealth of experience and insight into how volunteers contribute to the success of events like the UEFA Champions League and the upcoming Euros in Germany this summer. So whether you're a seasoned volunteer or volunteer manager, an aspiring event organizer, or simply curious about the inner workings of major sporting events, you won't want to miss this conversation with Olivier. Stay tuned for an enlightening discussion on the Engaged Volunteer podcast. All right, Olivier Chovin, Event Workforce Specialist at UEFA, aka leading the charge for all volunteer engagement and management across all UEFA events in partnership with Adrian there at UEFA. Mate, it's so awesome to have you on the podcast. How are you?
Thank you, Shannon. I'm very glad to be here and to be part of this podcast. It's really a big pleasure and honor to be part of it. So I'm doing well and I'm ready for the interview today.
Yeah, lovely, mate. And mate, where do we find you in the world at the moment?
So in the moment, we are based in Nyon, so at the HQ of UEFA in Switzerland, by the Lake of Geneva. So that's where we are preparing the different UEFA events where a lot of volunteers are actually involved. So that's where we are.
Yeah, for sure. Mate, for the listeners, can you give us a snapshot of the sheer scale of the UEFA volunteer program? Just a quick snapshot before we get into things.
Yeah, of course. So we are having volunteers on different UEFA events. Mainly the male Euro is our biggest one. We are at the moment finalizing the preparation for the Euro in the summer. So 16,000 volunteers. We will do it together with the host cities. So it's the biggest program we have ever done at UEFA. But we're also active on other events like Women's Euro that will happen the year after, and also on the club finals. So for instance, Champions League, that is quite famous. And also different side events like when we had the final draw, for instance. So these are thousands of volunteers involved every year.
Excellent. And it's the Champions League and all these major events that you're at spread all across Europe. Well, I mean, how many countries are you operating in? And yourself, are you traveling a lot in your role or mostly at a headquarter?
Yeah, so we have 55 national associations at UEFA. And as you might know, the finals are a bit moving from one country to another every year. So myself, I'm based at the HQ, but in each country, we have every time what we call a local volunteer manager. That is our main counterpart, recruited by the national association, because we have to rely on the national associations to conduct our volunteer programs, because volunteers are recruited locally. And yes, so every year it's approximately 5-6 venues. And myself, I'm helping only during the operational phase when we are delivering the events. But during the year, we are in contact with our colleagues in the national associations, trying to help them on delivering volunteer programs a bit in the UEFA way, but always with a local touch, which is very interesting because every year we learn from, again, new countries, new colleagues, and it's very, very great. Yeah.
Yeah, excellent. Now, you've been at UEFA for 6-7 years now. Is that right?
Yeah.
So obviously you've been on a bit of a journey there. And I know from our time that we've spent together over the years, football has been a foundation of your life and it's driven you to where you are now. Now, people that work in volunteer management, the career path, it's not like you're going in a course for volunteer management or engagement, are you? It's often come from different pathways and football seemed to be yours. Do you want to take us back to the start, mate, growing up in France and I guess loving the sport and how it's driven you and sort of the steps you've taken to land where you are today?
Oh yeah, football is my biggest passion in life. So it really came when France hosted the World Cup '98. I think, as many other kids, I started to play football because France won that World Cup, and it was a source of inspiration for all of us with Zidane and other players. And after that, I studied foreign languages. I was a bit looking for what to do in the future. And my path brought me to Germany. And at some point, there was an opportunity to volunteer for the Women's World Cup 2011 in Germany. So I said, yeah, why not? Let's try. And I became a media volunteer in Frankfurt. It was nice. I learned a lot also about women's football. Was completely new to me. And after that, I realized, I want to work in this business. It's great. There are some jobs that I didn't know about before. And that's why then I came back to France, to Paris, where I finalized my master. The master thesis that I wrote was about how to manage volunteer at major sporting events. And it was really nice.
I might pause you there, Olivier. That's a unique thesis to write. Was that all just because of your experience volunteering at the Women's Euros, or was there a broader background to that?
I would say it was something I was very curious about, and it was not necessarily a topic that my mates were also picking. So back in that time, everyone wanted to write something about, I don't know, marketing in football or whatever. And I said, let's try something new. And maybe there are some nice people to interview around the world. And I've been in touch with people of different organizations, also from the marathon in Chicago, for instance, where I myself also volunteer once, during
Nice.
my study. Yeah, it was super nice. And with all of this together, I said, maybe there is something to discover and a bit to see if there is a sort of harmonization of the programs around the world and to see a bit, in which direction all those programs are going to. And this, at the end of the day, offered me the possibility to find a job in this business. And again, a bit of luck, but the Euro 2016 was coming to France. There were some jobs, and I started my first job as a volunteer coordinator for the Euro in Paris. So with more than 1,000 volunteers to manage, it was really, really great. Yeah, it's how a bit everything started. And since then, I'm always connected to this topic that I love, and there is always new things to improve and implement. So that's great.
Mate, it's really lovely to hear that. And it's amazing that the time and luck sometimes of these events have shaped your life. You know, like the World Cup in France, then the Euros being in Paris, just happening to be in the place and time that you're around and shaping the passion that you have. I think back to last year, we had the Women's World Cup here in Australia for football. And I have a 4-year-old daughter, Olivia, which I think you might know, and her passion for football now. Oh my God, like it's so beautiful to see that journey that and the impact. And she still talks about that as a 4-year-old, let alone, someone going through their career. But I just find it fascinating sometimes the time and chance and locality that helps steer people to where you are. Yeah, I think it's very interesting. So then from there, you got a job in Germany, didn't you, with Hamburg? Is that right?
Yeah, it was a bit during a sort of gap year for me. So I really love Germany, and I was thinking, I would like to find an internship there, something. And I sort of merge a bit my experience as a youth coach with this, ambitions or visions to try an experience in Germany. And then I found this job as a youth coach in the academy of the club in Hamburg, so the HSV in German. Was really a great year, and something that really also helped me to take a bit of self-confidence. And working with kids is also great because you learn from them, and you also act a bit as a model to them, and you can bring them back something also from what you learned on the pitch of your former coaches. And was really great, and also as a life experience. Was my first year abroad technically, and was nice. So also great memories. And now again that the next Euro is happening in Germany this summer, it brings me back also somehow to a country that I like a lot. And it's somehow all connected, and it's really great.
Yeah, it's nice, isn't it? And then I see on your part of your journey in Africa.
Yeah.
You want to talk about that part and what led to ending up in Africa? How did that happen?
Well, so when we finished the Euro 2016 in France, France lost the final against Portugal, but then some colleagues were starting to speak about, in this business, we have a lot of fixed term contracts. What do we do next? And some colleagues told me, yeah, we are going to Gabon. The next Africa Cup of Nations is there next December, January, February. So would you like to join? I was like, yeah, why not? You know, you're young, you are motivated. Every experience is an experience. And
how old were you at this point?
27.
Yeah, cool. So
27 years old.
Your experience is happy to travel, no firm commitments tying you down. Yep.
Correct. And so sometimes something that I give as a tip to my younger colleagues who say, yeah, what should I look for next? And I'm like, yeah, when you're young, you're available, you're motivated,
Yep.
really no barrier. So the world is yours, and make yourself available, try on. And that's, what happened to me also with Gabon, and was a really nice life experience. I mean, I was also a volunteer manager there, completely different setup, different culture. Just to give you an example, so there we had to pay the volunteers, so it was a paid volunteer experience because it is what it is, and it was really, really, really great. I learned a lot also about myself and different challenges, always with the objective for the organization committee there to do it on the Euro standards, let's say. We did our best, and at the end, I think we delivered something great. And it showed also that everywhere around the world, people are super motivated about those big events. And it was really nice at the end what we have been able to deliver. But really, for me, it was also on a personal side, it was a big experience. And then after that, I came back to Europe. I worked a bit again at the French Football Association in Paris. And eventually came the opportunity through my manager, Adrian, that you know, to join UEFA. And that's where I am now.
Were you both together at the French Football Federation, or he was at UEFA and did you know him before that, or you applied and you got to know him?
No, he was there already at UEFA for a long time. And we met basically during the Euro in France because he was sort of managing all of us or overseeing the delivery of the program. And he was our main counterpart at UEFA. So we met briefly during some workshops. We had a good connection, also a bit with the German speaking, of course, the passion for football. And at some points, I think it's a bit being at the right time, at the right place. And he was in a need for someone for a short contract initially. And I said again, a bit like with the Gabon opportunity, why not? Let's try, even if this is for 6 months. Let's help and let's see where it will go. And then came this Euro 2020, this special edition across Europe. And there were a bit more needs to complete the team. And since then, keep doing it at UEFA, and that's a big pleasure. So
yeah, often about getting a start, isn't it? Sometimes you've just got to say yes to things, and
exactly.
let fate unfold in terms of where you could find it. Can I ask if you remember when you started in that team? Were you like, this is my dream job, I will do everything possible to keep this job? Or was it like, oh, roll with the punches and see if I might end up back in Africa? Like, where were you at in your career at that point?
I was still at this point where, you are really open to everything. For me, there was always this driving passion of football. So I was like, yeah, I love this business, but the graal of the graal would be to do it in football because it would be an opportunity to mix or merge two things that I like a lot. So volunteering and / volunteer management and the football. So I was like, yeah, sounds like a dream job. But also you have to be realistic. You never know also what are the needs. And, with some short-term contracts, sometimes you know that you're here for 3 months, 6 months. That's the deal. You do your best. Sometimes there is something at the end, sometimes not. But I think, as usual, if you enjoy the journey, that's the most important thing, that you have the feeling that you do something that you like on a daily basis. That's something that is motivating you. And I was really in this spirit. And here we are. For me, that's the most important. If you like what you do, whatever you do, you will be happy. At the end of the day, we are at work, but it's also related to something we like. It's related to a passion. But that's also why we spend so much time and so much energy. But at the end of the day, it's a win-win situation, I have to say.
It really is. And I think so many people listening to this podcast will be going, oh my God, how do I get Olivier's job or being in that team that Olivier's in? What about that interaction with Adrian? Because again, so many of these are chance moments, right? Like, had you not met in person, would you have got the job by working together at an event? Do you recall sort of working closely with him and being like, wow, this is the guy I need to get to know? Or was it just, again, coincidental and you just happened to bump into each other and then again in an interview?
Well, first of all, something I forgot to mention is that Adrian was one of the person I interviewed during my master thesis.
Yeah.
And back in that time, I was already thinking, hey, there is something at UEFA, the way they deliver the UEFA volunteer programs, that is already well structured. So there is already something that is very attractive somehow, because there is UEFA way of delivering volunteer programs. And for me, UEFA is still on the market, one of the leaders in volunteer management. And I was like, hey, it would be great to learn from it and also to contribute to it, trying to be as much, again, professional and hardworking on that. And I remember that interview and I was like, yes, there would be a lot of things to learn from him and from the way, again, UEFA is delivering the volunteer programs. And yeah, I think I was right, because it's really also on a daily basis. It's a pleasure to work for that team and to try to keep the high standards that we have. And
yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, no, I love it. And it's certainly, I mean, from all we see in the work we do, UEFA's certainly up there in terms of volunteer programs and the scale that you operate at as well, which we're going to talk about around the efficiency of the program as well, and wanting to make sure quality over quantity is such a key thing in ensuring the right people in the right roles, even though you're operating at such a large scale. It's a fascinating operation that I think people will be interested to learn about. So I guess where it puts us today, Olivier, is that we've got the Euros coming up in Germany this year. You touched on it before, but do you want to talk about the scale, how many venues, how long it goes for, how many volunteers, the team around it? Give us a flavor of what this event looks like, because it is ginormous.
Yeah, it is. Again, it's the biggest we ever had at UEFA. So we have 10 venues. And for the first time, we decided also to do it together with the host cities. It sounds a bit logic for some people, but it was not always the case, because usually what we deliver as activities at the stadiums mainly is, again, operated by UEFA. But there are always also some volunteers in the city centers, for instance, that the host cities are managing. And this time we decided, yes, we think that in Germany we have strong partners and we can do it together to give really this one approach image to the volunteer program, and not having, I don't know, two different programs, people at the stadium with a specific uniform, people in the city center with another one, and then creates a bit of confusion why those ones get this, the other ones get that. And we said, yeah, Germany is the great opportunity to try implementing it completely together. That's why we have this full merge approach with them. And that's why we are at the moment looking for 16,000 volunteers. That's why the scale of this program. But for that, yeah, we have some staff managing these volunteers, or who recruited these volunteers. So 10 venue teams. So we really believe that it's important that the team, the manager, are based locally, so that they can really reach out to people where people are. That's important. And yes, so it's approximately 40 people altogether as staff. We have also a team in the HQ in Frankfurt, that is the headquarters of Euro 2024. Also some very good colleagues working there in the central. And at the end, yes, we have a lot of volunteers in Germany in the 10 venues for approximately 1 month of tournament. But of course, volunteers start always a bit earlier for the setup, and then also a bit for the dismantling. So yeah, it's going to be 2 intensive months, let's say, this summer, with a lot of volunteers around Germany.
It's amazing. And let's focus what you touched on at the start about that sort of one team, one dream, if you will, of the combined UEFA and the host committee. Maybe talk to us about what it was in the past and what's driven it to be that combined vision for this event, because people perhaps not from the sports world may not understand that in detail. Can you provide some more color to that?
Yeah, of course. So for us, I think it's important to understand that the volunteers are, at the end of the day, not recruited by UEFA. So we really need to rely on our partners and colleagues from the national associations. So wherever we go for an event, we need to rely on them. And we are looking for local resources and to give also local taste to the events. And if we speak about Germany, for instance, maybe many people listening to us remember this incredible World Cup 2006 in Germany. That really something that gave a big boost also to volunteering in Germany. After that, many Bundesliga clubs, they got also their own volunteer program. And this was really a golden time, I have to say. And many people have some great memories about these tournaments. And among our applicants, we got a lot of people who participated as volunteers also during this World Cup. But times have changed also a bit. I mean, it's already now a bit long time ago already. And we of course are looking for also the new generation and to see in which direction are we going to make sure that we have this, let's say, routinier, these volunteers that have done so many events, but also the fresh blood, the new generation that we are very happy to welcome as well. So we are really looking for a strong mix, as usual, on a lot of local people.
Mm-hmm.
We give a lot of importance to them, and also some international, because at the end it's also an international event. So we have applicants from, again, around the world, and we will also welcome a few of them. So it's going to be a big one. But to get back to the questions, so related to this setup, for us, it was important, to have this one team approach or one global vision approach, and to say, there is Euro happening in Germany. So it's important that everyone who is volunteering from far to close to the stadiums or wherever we are has the same, let's say, the same experience somehow, that we are trying to make everyone receiving the same experience and make sure that wherever you are volunteering, you are part of the same community, you are part of the same events, you give something to your favorite sport, to your country, to your city, to your community. And for us, it's very important to have this. And it was a long way, let's say, but at the end of the day, we are very happy about the way it's going. And we are sure it will be a great experience for everyone. And also with this joint approach, it's more technical aspect, but we have now also this capacity to, since all volunteers are part of one pool, you can also say, for instance, on the match day, you are active at the stadium, while on the next day, you are active in the city center, at the fan zone, or wherever. And having one common pool, and again, one common vision, one common level of service to all the volunteers, just makes it smoother, but also better in terms of experience for the volunteers.
Because I know from like a Super Bowl and other major events where sometimes there's two volunteer programs running at the same time. Olympics, I know that there's an element sometimes to these major events, which a lot of people probably wouldn't understand. Sometimes they're wearing different uniforms, but at the end of the day, you're doing the same thing. But I do find it fascinating for those that still operate with two sort of different programs. It's interesting, but I'm looking forward myself personally to getting over to Germany and seeing these volunteers all across Germany wearing the same kit, being briefed the same way, consistency of experience, I think, as well for volunteers too. I think it's a brilliant journey that it's on. Now, could you give our listeners a bit of a step-by-step journey of this massive program that it is for the Men's Euros coming up this year, in terms of like, when did you launch? What about screening? What about interviewing? What about your background check? Like, can you almost get into a bit of the granularity just so people understand the work that's involved in order to progress a program like this? And it's obviously for us with Rostify, one of our proudest customers that we get to work with, just given the scale and the operation that you guys run. But there's just so much involved, I think, that maybe listeners may not quite grasp, especially if you want to start at such a large number of applicants to get down to such a selected group. Do you want to talk to that?
So, as you might know, it's a lot of preparation ahead of the tournament. So we really even started to, at least for the volunteer program, to plan it 3.5 years before the event itself. But the biggest milestone, let's say, in terms of preparation is when we are live and when we launch officially the application. So that's, let's say, the biggest moment when we are a bit getting some visibility and reaching out to people, saying, hey, something is happening soon. If you would like to volunteer, there are some opportunities. Here is the link to apply, etc. But that's the biggest event, pre-event for us. And we decided to launch it.
If we look at the dates, when does this happen?
So, of course, it's a matter of strategy. So you can decide, whenever you want. But we decided to do it at a very specific date. That was the 1 year to go. So 14th of June, 2023, because the 14th of June, 2024 will be the opening game in Munich. So we decided to do it on that day to, again, raise a bit the visibility and make it also a bit clearer to the people, because sometimes when you do it a bit too early, people don't realize that the event is even coming or arriving. So you really have sometimes to teach people, hey, by the way, there is this event coming to your country next year. But it was for us the right date, and it was amazing. So in the 10 cities, we got also our colleagues who have been able to push also the information to really spread it. And was really great is that approximately 50% of our applicants in total, they applied in the first week of the applications.
Wow.
So there was really this boost, and we realized, that's really the moment when people are a bit looking at the event, focusing and hearing about it, and that was brilliant. So from that moment on, then you start receiving, so your life, so you start receiving applications, so people sharing their interest, and then you have to have a team also in charge in front of them, so to reply to all their questions, emails, phone calls, etc. Then we started this phase of screening all the applications that were arriving in the system with our 10 venue volunteer management teams in the 10 venues or cities. So we started this screening, and then we started the interview phase. So it was approximately 4 months of interviews. Also, after COVID, after the last edition, we learned also on how to conduct online interviews. It was not necessarily the case before, or not in this big scale. I remember myself, 2016, we conducted almost 95% of the interviews in face-to-face in France. This time, we decided to do it, let's say 50-50. So some people still having the opportunity to come face-to-face to the interviews, but for a lot of applicants, we also proposed an online interview that was also very nice. And again, we learned a lot about those processes to make it as much human as possible, to offer also an experience during the interview to say, if you do it online, you have also the same chances and the same opportunity to express yourself, to share about your backgrounds, and also again to ask your questions. So that was important. So those 4 months, I would say, of interviews have been then conducted. And let's say that, when was that? 15th of December, if I remember well, we closed officially the applications.
Oh, sorry. Applications were open the entire time from June 14, and
Yes.
they were still open until December 15. Yet you were
Absolutely.
interviewing. When did interviewing start?
Well, we had different timings, let's say, in the 10 venues, but I think the first interview started, the big benches of interviews started in September. So September, October, November, December, mid of August, we had already some, but yes, it was more or less this time frame. So from mid-August to mid of December. The interesting thing is that at the beginning of your interview phase, you start a bit proposing every roles, and every positions are open to everyone. And then the more you progress also in your recruitment, the more you become, let's say, precise and a bit also picky in terms of what are the roles where maybe you look for more people, or the ones where you are looking for some specific skills or level of availabilities, etc. So you can then really adapt your recruitment every month to see a bit, how do I reach to my objectives, to, again, fill out all the roles, all the positions, to have, again, this very versatile pool of volunteers with different profiles, skills, backgrounds, availabilities, etc. So you can really adapt. So and at the end of the day, we close it because we thought we have enough candidates now. We think we are fine with this pool. And since mid of December, people started to receive, and that's where we stand right now, feedback about their interviews and whether they are in or not, and then the role offer. So that is almost completed by now. Yep, that's where we stand.
Yeah, so you've gone through the interviews and now the role offer stage. So you're now offering out the roles to all the volunteers. And if we look at the timeline, it's February, March, April, May, June. You still have 4 months to go. So role offers are going out now. What now happens? They'll be accepting or declining, I suppose, role offers, right? And then you'll probably have, maybe another month of then fine-tuning those role offers and filling up those gaps. What then happens from there? When does the shift allocation begin? Because that's the very granular work, isn't it? But very critical.
But it is. Technically, it already started. So some volunteers who have accepted the role already received the information about what is the expected amount of shifts that they will have to do. It's really, for us, important. It was also something in the past we realized maybe sometimes we did it a bit too late, because we realized people really need to freeze these availabilities as soon as possible, especially the ones who are working that needs to take some days off, for instance, but also for students, because some of them, they plan, if not selected, to go, I don't know, on holidays or whatever. And for this, I have to say that also this year, we have never been that early in this process. We are now at 98% already of the role acceptances. Of course, some people will maybe try to change, or their availabilities will get a bit modified, but we are in very, very good shape, I have to say. And that's going to be one of the next main steps to make sure that now everyone also receive the shift plans, secure the availabilities, again, to make sure that we are aligned and on the same page about that. But yes, we have also some volunteers that are, let's say, on our reserve lists, and that they will for sure get an opportunity, because we know that some volunteers, unfortunately, they will maybe change their mind or drop out until the event. So we really believe that so people from our reserve list, they will get a chance at some point, which is super important. And yes, so in the next months, this shift planning will be finalized. The next big event in the preparation will be what we call the kickoff event. That's the general training session of all volunteers. So in every venue, there will be one event, so 10 events in total. That's a day or half a day, let's say, where all the volunteers, they will come together and they will receive a general training. So it's a training that really is, let's say, important for any volunteers, whatever the role you have. So it's about, as a volunteer, how do I get my uniform? How do I get my accreditation? How do I get my meals, etc.? So it's really something important, and also to bring them all in the mood of the events, motivate them, make them meet each other. And that's very important event that will happen around April. So that's the next big milestones also, where they will also learn about how to use the mobile app that we are currently implementing with Rostofy. That's important to make them really ready for the operations. And after that, the next steps will be, again, always to keep in close contact with them, because we also realize that there is a sort of gap that you need to fill. Because if you accept your role, I don't know, in January, February, until the event, if you don't do anything, if you don't organize anything, then people will, I don't know,
forget.
Maybe the focus, exactly. Maybe not forget about it. But they need to be in contact with you. They might have some questions. They might have some, I don't know, doubts, or they would like to have more details about anything. And that's super important also as a community, to really keep them always close to us in terms of communications, on board, engage, exactly. So that's why those months are really important, because all the efforts of the recruitment, if right now you would lose your community, then it's all lost. So
it's such an important point, I think, because I remember Andy Newman spoke about it for Birmingham Com Games and other major events he's worked on, about that it's a 12-month journey, right? Like, they're committed to do something for free. So they're taking time off their paid job to be there. And I guess you are in the luxury, right? UEFA and FIFA and other organizations similar, where you'll always have way too many applications, ultimately, not always, but, for the major tournaments, where words of like 100,000 volunteer applications for an event of this size to get down to 16,000. Do you want to talk to me about somewhat of the challenge of that sometimes? It's a great opportunity for you guys, but it's also challenging too, that you're going to have to say no more often than you're saying yes. Maybe how have you learnt to manage that across your time in these 6 years you've been at UEFA, and how do you guys handle that?
And it's normal if you apply for anything, also yourself, if you apply for a job or whatever, you have expectations then towards the entity you have applied to. And you expect, to receive communications, to receive some answers, if you ask questions, to have some feedbacks, etc. And I think it's really important, because, as you said, we are speaking about numerous applicants, but you have to give also to all of them a bit this respect back, in a way that if they apply and they ask you for a feedback about their applications, whether it's for yes or for no, you have to give this to them. You have to consider them not just as a number, but as a human behind an application. And that's really where we tried, again, through some processes and trying to standardize our processes to be even more efficient, because we know that, and we realize we receive more and more applications, but we try to really, as a matter of respect, to also reply to all of them, to give to all of them a feedback, and to try to explain also if this is a yes or if this is a no, why, etc. And it's nice to see all this interest, that more and more people are applying for our events. But the challenge is also, that you need, first of all, to keep them engaged, of course. But at every step of the recruitment process, or then the training process and the onboarding process, you need to be in close contact with them. And for that, you need resources. So people really, again, on the ground, to take care of the volunteers, but you need also to have a good strategy and a good communication plan in place to make sure that, everyone who applied receive a feedback. Anyone who is invited for an interview receive a feedback, etc., to make sure that, it doesn't just give the feeling that you're applying, I don't know, in a computer, and then you don't know what will happen with your application. That's a challenge, but I think the more you can do is, again, having your processes in place, being well organized, and work hard as well, because it's human project at the end of the day, and human look for human contact, and that's fair enough.
Yeah, fair enough. No, that's cool. Thank you. You touched on it earlier around trying to find different demographics and also some younger demographics as well to volunteer, which, some may argue are more challenging to bring into volunteering. I actually believe the opposite. I think they're sometimes the best people to get engaged, but there's a certain way of engaging younger demographics to get them involved. And once you do, it can really light up your program and your applications can go through the roof and engagement and everything. I know obviously we're working together on the mobile app this year, but that experience for potentially if we focus on younger demographics, do you want to talk about your experience there on either targeting them or trying to bring them into the program, maybe how their experience has needed to evolve over the last few years? Do you want to touch on that a bit?
It's important to see that on average, if we say people who are aged like from 18 years old to 25 are approximately 50% of our applicants.
Yeah.
So it's a huge target group, let's say, for us. It shows also a bit, again, the interest. And when I remember myself, when you are at the beginning of your career, maybe you're a bit lost or you don't know exactly what you want to do and you want to try things. For me, volunteering is super, super good opportunity. I can only talk about my own experience. It's the right way to, you cannot fail as a volunteer. You are here, you have time, you are motivated, you look, you listen, you learn. And again, it's a great opportunity. And then you can make up your mind thinking, okay, now, I don't know, I volunteered for the media team. Do I like it? Yes, no. Is it something I would like to see for my career? Or maybe next time I would try another position and maybe I'm more like a guy of, I don't know, logistic action or something like that. Or I feel myself more comfortable behind a desk, planning things, etc. So volunteering is really offering you this chance, usually short term, and you can really try new things and connect with people, keep some contacts, ask questions to the professionals, see if you would be able to imagine yourself in this job, etc. So it's really great. So what we see with this new generation is that the expectations are getting higher and higher. That's a bit the feeling we have. And the user experience is super important. If we speak, for instance, about the Volunteer mobile app or even the system, we took this decision some years ago now at UEFA to start working in collaboration with you guys, because we saw also that the overall user experience was much smoother and much more interactive and easygoing also as a user experience, which is super important for our target group to make sure that when you apply, it's smooth, it's easy, you know exactly where to click, where to go. And the same with the mobile application. That is something that we are really happy to implement because the new generation is very connected. Now we are all the time with the smartphones. People also share a lot their experience. So sometimes we see volunteers that after 5 seconds at the venue, they start already posting things and sharing stories, etc. It's the way that people are connected now to their own community, and we have to adapt also to this and make sure that we are also attractive to them and we're offering something that is matching their expectations. Of course, if you take the new generations, sometimes when we have young volunteers, they are also here, as I said, to create a bit of a networking. They are really with this objective of maybe finding a job afterwards. That's not something we are able to promise because it's much more complex than that. But again, I think we try to give them the opportunity to discover our business, also from the back office, let's say from the backstage of our events. And again, give to them the opportunity also to share also their skills, their profiles, to try, because as I said, as a volunteer, you cannot fail. There is nothing wrong. So you can just try and say, I liked it. I can imagine myself in this business in the future or not. But for us, it's important, again, to offer to them an experience that is smooth and that at the end is also enjoyable, that they had a feeling, okay, I gave my time, because time is super important for all of us, for everyone. Life is short, as we all know, and we have to prioritize things. And when people say, I want to give, 2 weeks for this event volunteering, yes, they are giving time to us. And in exchange, I think our role and our mission is to offer to them proper experience and to say, okay, at the end of the day, they have learned things, they have new friends, it's always happening, they have plenty of memories, they have lived something that is not the daily routine, because those events for me are always, also as a staff, is a little bubble, let's say, is a moment in the year when you're doing something special, something different from your routine. And people at the end of the day, if I take our post-event surveys that we are doing with volunteers, on average, we are still reaching to 98%, 99% of people who say, I would like to do it again. And sometimes on sites, there are days where it's a bit more boring, or there is, again, a bit less to do, or sometimes it's there is a high intensity of activities, etc. Sometimes, again, it's a human business, so there are some little conflicts between people. Yeah, some days you are more tired or whatever. But at the end of the day, almost everyone says, I would like to come back again or to do it again. And it shows also that I think everyone had this feeling, everyone who worked in the sports business had this feeling that, especially when you deliver a very intense event, the weeks after, the days after, when you're back home in your apartment, you have the feeling, wow, my life sucks now. Let's say it was so great this time. You know, you have a bit this this sad moment when you realize how great it was. Okay, I'm exhausted. Sometimes it was stressful. Sometimes there was that one guy I did not really get along with, etc. But at the end of the day, we are all friends, and we are all super sad that this event is already behind us. And this is really full of emotions as well. And volunteers are feeling the same. And that's why we are always happy to see them coming back again and again and again. And we are like, hey, you're not tired to volunteer? No, I love it. And I love my jobs. I love my life. But once a year, I like to do Champions League final, for instance, for a few days. And that's amazing.
Yeah, it really is. I'm interested to hear about how you go rewarding, recognizing volunteers. I know in a lot of other major events we work with, they've got retention tactics because, you know, day one, if I'm a volunteer working in the car park at 6 a.m. going, oh my God, what did I sign up for? Why am I going to turn up for day 2, day 3, day 4? Especially when you're requiring your volunteers often to do a minimum of, say, 5 days, etc. Do you have something like that where volunteers as an incentive for them to turn up each day, or it's not something that UEFA do in terms of reward and recognition? How do you go about that incentivizing or engagement with volunteers when they're at the event?
So what we try to do is really to make every day an experience. So in terms of incentives, we believe that every day you can really teach something to the volunteers or to show them something new. If we're just being, for instance, about the mission itself, so the training for me is already something that is considered as an incentive, because that's really a moment when you can, again, learn from a professional, receive some new information. That's something that is, for me, part of the incentives. Then on a daily basis, for me, it's important also that our managers who are working with volunteers, they are able to also offer, for instance, a bit of a turnover, that you are not always doing the exact same position or tasks, so that you can a bit rotate and see different things. That's also why we are very...
I think that's an interesting one for especially major event workforce managers, that adjustment of positions. Now, it would be much easier for you to allocate Shannon to car park 5 days straight, wouldn't it? But you consciously move people around roles a little bit to keep them fresh and give them, you know, I'm looking forward to day 3 when I might be in the stadium or near there. Do you want to talk to maybe if that's challenging or why you do it, how you do it? Yeah.
I think the important thing to understand is also that as volunteer managers, you are serving, let's say, 2 clients. The first one is obviously the volunteer. So you have to make your volunteers happy, for them to come back, for them to have a nice experience, and also, again, to give back to them the time they are giving to you. That's super important. But on the other side, you have also to make the other clients happy, which are the projects you are working with. So all these projects or domains of activities that are requesting the support of volunteers, you need also to satisfy them, like giving to them of course, the right numbers of volunteers with the right skills, with the right availabilities. That's the core of our business. But for them, sometimes it's a bit of a conflict with our vision to offer that level of flexibility in terms of tasks, in terms of turnovers, etc. Because if I put myself in their shoes, sometimes you could imagine, it's easy for them to say, Shannon, at every match day, is having that one position at the car park
Yep.
or at the welcome desk, and then I will brief him only once, and he will do it for 5 matches, for instance, during the Euro. That's an easy way to go. But on our side, we know that, and again, listening from the volunteers, that for a volunteer, as an experience, it's better to, for the first match, maybe to be at the welcome desk or at the car park, and the next one being maybe closer to the stands or being at the media office or being somewhere else. And that's something we also try to influence when we speak to our colleagues from the different domains of activities, to say, hey, if you want to keep your volunteers motivated, especially if we are doing a Euro that is long, we would really encourage you to proceed with this turnover and try always to keep them motivated to do every day. That's also something that sometimes, also when you're a bit in a rush in the morning, it's events time, you don't necessarily take the time to do the briefing in the morning or the debriefing at the end of the day. Those moments are super important. It's like in sports, when you arrive in the locker room, if your coach is not telling you, hey, what is the way we're playing today, you're a bit lost. At some point, you lose a bit, the motivation naturally. And I think it's important that every morning, also the welcome time is important, that you really know also your volunteers, their names, what are the preferences, etc. And that's about managing people at the end of the day. And we really also internally we have also some e-learning module in place to teach to our own colleagues who are like great professional in their own domains, on how important all these little moments and these little elements of managing people are to keep their team motivated and to have them perform as much as they can and in the greatest way when volunteers are on shift. And again, briefing them in the morning, saying, hey, what are the objectives of the day? Hey, today it's match day. Today it's a hot game because, I don't know, these are two teams that really don't necessarily like each other. So there will be fans that today the atmosphere might be a bit electric at the venue or whatever. These are little things that people like, volunteers like, and they like to feel part of the venue team. They like to feel being part of the event itself and just not feeling, I don't know, used. Okay, yeah. Shannon, you know where you have to go. You know your welcome desk. Thank you, ciao. And at the end of the day, maybe you had one issue with a guest or whatever, and you have no stage to express your feelings, your frustrations, or your experience. We realize how important it is, and that's why we also internally, as a competence center, we try to make all our colleagues aware of that at the end of the day, to improve the experience of everyone, also of the colleagues themselves, but also of the volunteers.
And that you just said the word, Volunteer Competence Center. It's something I've seen the work you guys have done and put into this. You've touched on it. You've somewhat described it there in terms of the education, but do you want to summarize that? Because I think, man, like what a cool thing to do and implement and focus on and build year after year, right? So that if you were to fall over one day, the next person can roll in because you're building competence in volunteering in your organization. And maybe when you describe it, put yourself in the shoes of a charity or anyone that is wanting to build competence in volunteering in their organization. Do you want to summarize it for me?
Of course. No, this word is very important to me, competence center. It shows also the wish and the willingness of UEFA to get better and better every year, and not just to say, because you could have different way of seeing the things. So you could say, hey, we have one event, it's short term, we do it, we deliver it, and ciao. It's behind us, we forget about it. Let's focus to the next one. We believe that we can learn a lot from our past, the good things we did, the mistakes we did, and build up on something that is every year, let's say, stronger and stronger or more consolidated every year. It's super important because we realize that at the end of the day, what we are doing is a bit repetitive. But of course, you need always to adapt to the local environment, to the local colleagues, to the local setup of every event. But there are a lot of things that at the end, when you do it in Athens, you do the same in Budapest, or you do the same in London, or you do the same in Berlin. And we try to, again, consolidate our different processes, documents, tools to every year try to improve and share the experience from the past with the next colleagues we are going to working with. And it's about, again, all these documents, tools, etc. But it's also about the network sometimes, because what we saw with this Euro 2020 that was all around Europe, that at the end of the day, the years after, we had to go back to some venues where we've been before. And if we have already a very well-trained volunteer manager or coordinator there in the country that we worked with, 2 years ago, doing it again with the same person, it's again building up on experience. And these are really things that at the end you see the payback, let's say, because you really build not only on, again, documents, processes, etc., but also on people. And for us, it's important because at the end of the day, we are going to work again and again with our national associations. And if we have already some people who did it in the past, then we are going to be even more efficient for the next events. And again, these competence centers tries again to archive things and consolidate whatever we've done, always in order to be better the next time and to learn again from our experience. And I think my feeling is Adrian started it years ago, and I really realized that we are getting, again, better and better, faster and faster as well. We are also getting more and more competitions at UEFA. 2 years ago, we started the UEFA Conference League, etc. So there are more events also where we are, as a competence center, asked to help with volunteers. And we see also that's also something very great, that we get this confidence from the colleagues around that say, hey, we want you guys to help us with the volunteer program on our events. And we are doing more and more, faster and faster. But I have also the feeling that we are somehow stronger and stronger because we are, again, having our processes in place. And we are also always able sometimes to connect people with other people. So I don't know if you have delivered the Europa League final last year in Budapest. We put our manager in contact with our manager from Dublin this year, etc. So to always, again, share experience and make sure that not only we have a volunteer community, but we have also a volunteer managers community around Europe.
Yeah.
And that's really great. We see today the added value of that.
Yeah. And I think obviously the technology team aren't part of this podcast. This is very much focused for the volunteering people on the front line. But, you know, the team like Yavor, Najib, Carlos, the team that support from a technology perspective, it's, I don't know, maybe do you want to touch on like the importance of having that resource, I guess, at UEFA? Like from like what I see from my side, I know the work Yavor and the team are doing on replicating workflows for events so that you're not starting again each time from a new event perspective. And I just think that's such a game-changing approach, because I see other customers or other people in other industries that do that. They start again. And sometimes a big part of starting again is systems and onboarding processes and documentation, but you can centralize that and replicate, copy from, and launch much faster. Do you want to give perspective to that technology team that supports you guys? Because I know you've worked very closely together over the years to achieve this goal, haven't you?
No, these guys are super important to us. I mean, it's really a team effort at the end of the day. So we have the knowledge about volunteer management, but we need also these specialists on the technology or technique part to support us, because we would not have the capacity to do it just by ourselves. And we see, as you said, it's a game changing, and working with them in a close collaboration, it makes it also easier, because we realize, also myself in some of my previous jobs, that if your technical advisor or the technical specialist, for instance, as you mentioned, Yavor, Matthias, Najib, etc., they have no clue about your business, they can be as much specialist as possible in their own domain, the match will not be great.
Yeah.
It's not going to work well, because you need the business to be, for me, in very close contact with the technical side to make sure that they understand our needs and we also understand their constraints. And if we speak together and we create, again, this close collaboration, that we are in touch on a regular basis, for me, that's the best way of delivering it at the highest level of service level. And that's why it's very important that we try to keep as much business continuity as possible. And also because if you change your technician every 6 months, it's a bit like changing a coach in a football team every 6 months, then you lose the continuity. And then at the end of the day, you see that the results are suffering from it. That's why we realize how important it is to involve them, to make sure that they understand our business, that they go also on site, meet with the volunteers, speak to the volunteers, to see how is it the journey of a volunteer in real on site. And that's also something we try again to improve years after years. And we are happy about the direction we are going at the moment. But again, it has to be a close collaboration where everyone understands the needs and the constraints of the other one. And we just can confirm the added value of that.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Maybe one last question before we wrap up is
Sure.
obviously you're going to have so many thousands of volunteers in Germany and you'll do the same in Champions League and all these events across the years. How do you go about retaining that database and making sure that these engaged volunteers then have a central profile across UEFA? And has that transitioned in your time at UEFA from a direction or a company perspective? Obviously, it's challenging with GDPR across Europe as well. So how do you handle that?
So, as you say, there are some constraints. If we speak about GDPR, that's a big one. So, what we have to do is, I think, what we launched also last year, probably you saw it, we have this now UEFA Volunteer Global Community. So, it's a website, so volunteercommunity.uefa.com. So, we are very proud of it because it was the visibility we were looking for, to say there is one central place where all the information about volunteering at UEFA events are centralized. And again, we're speaking about volunteering, so we have to rely on the people to voluntarily express their interest in volunteering at our events. So it means that, of course, you can say we try to stay connected with them, engaging them, you can send newsletters, etc. But what we also believe is that people know when our events are happening. And we see that having this visibility, this one platform, as soon as we are open to the next ones, so we say, for instance, next season, Champions League final is going to be there, etc. At least people have this one, let's say, lighthouse.
And they can just log back into
Exactly.
their own profile and their history is tracked.
Correct.
Right. So you know that Shannon was stuck in the car park in Germany, right? And you might want to get him involved in the stadium next time. That detail as well from an administration perspective is probably just as important from the volunteer perspective.
Well, depending on where we are having the events, there is always also a deadline for the data deletion, and that's something we have to deal with just to be compliant. And that's part of the game, and it's also very normal at the end of the day. But what is, for me, also making the user experience smoother is that also thanks to Rostify, we have now this global account that people have, once they have registered once, they can say, I keep my account cross events, and every time they redo an application for next events, they can just restart from where they were, from the same profile, and that's way easier for them, again, to reconnect. But of course, we cannot keep track on some data from the past. But at least for them, the experience is much smoother. Of course, if someone wants to say, hey, please delete my account, we do it. But overall, having this one Rostify account for everyone, it's making the process much smoother also from a volunteer perspective. And on our side, also having this one community platform directly related to also Rostify, then it's, again, offering us this visibility that anyone who is interested in volunteering at UEFA knows where are and when are the next events happening. And they can just decide, this year I want to do Europa League, next year maybe conference, etc. So it was also a bit the stone that was a bit missing in our constellation, let's say, that we have now. And we also, again, can only say about the added value of that. So
I think the branding of the accounts and the work your team have put into that, and I know our team too, to get the portals and the different branding for events and the communication, the headers and footers from Champions League compared to Euros, everything like that. It's so critical for an event like yours and a brand like UEFA to have that ability. But it touches on that, not just younger demographics, but probably most importantly, your comms are sharp and your portals look sharp. And I think for anyone listening that wants to see an example of what a great program looks like and feels like, I would suggest jumping on to the UEFA volunteer community and checking it out. So, look, Olivier, it's been amazing having you on. You and Adrian and the team have done just such an incredible job. And the Volunteer Competence Centre, I think, is such an interesting one for any organisation to start creating and looking at, no matter the size or shape of their program, about centralising and always continuing to learn and get better. I think it's fascinating, the work and dedication you've put into it, probably driven from Adrian at the start, but what you're helping to take on too. So, mate, thank you. I'll leave you with the one last one is, we've obviously got a lot of great guests on this podcast. Have you got maybe a question to ask the next guest, maybe to put you on the spot? Is there something from your experience, maybe if you stuff something up and what have you learned from it? Have you got an example of a question for the next guest you'd like to ask?
So maybe I would say I would be curious to hear a bit from the next guest. What is the vision for the future of the volunteer program that this person would have, because we have now, let's say, very well established programs. If you look a bit around the world, there is a sort of standardization of all the programs. It was actually the topic of my thesis or so years ago, and I still haven't found the right answer to that. So are we gonna, continue having more and more standardized programs around the world? Or the next guest, does this person think that there might be a new way of organizing volunteer programs? I don't know, coming through new technology, for instance, of maybe reinventing the wheel that we always say, hey, we know now how to do programs. It's clear, it's obvious. Everyone around the world does it more or less in the same way. And I would be curious to hear from that person if he or she could, foresee something completely new to completely reinvent our volunteer programs. I would be very curious to hear about that.
I love it.
What vision for the future? I don't know, in 10 years, 20 years, will we continue having volunteers at sports events? Yes, no. If yes, in which setup?
Yeah.
Good question.
Perfect. I love it. Thank you so much. It's a very good one. Could be a whole podcast in its own. And hopefully one day we'll finish that thesis, Olivier, with maybe an answer to your question.
Who knows?
Who knows? So, mate, thank you so much for your time. You've been very gracious. So thank you, mate, and look forward to seeing you in Germany.
Thank you, Shannon. It was a great pleasure. Thanks for the opportunity and take care.
Cool. Thanks, mate. Bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Engage Volunteer podcast. Tune back in next week to hear from the legendary Emma Peet, Event Workforce Manager at Formula E, the global electric car racing series engaging thousands of volunteers across 10 plus countries around the world. Emma will give you a behind-the-scenes look at Formula E events, including the recruitment, training, and coordination of volunteers. You'll learn about the unique challenges of rewarding and recognising volunteers from different cultures and demographics in the fast-paced world of electric car racing. If you're curious about the intersection of motorsports, sustainability, and volunteerism, be sure to tune in next week to discover how Formula E utilises the power of volunteers to drive success both on and off the track.